sound of my voice. Hello, check. Hello, Deep Mindfulness Collective. My name is Janusz, and this is the Joy of Being AliveStream. Welcome, everyone. So exciting to have you here with us. It's a delightful day, and I'm glad that we could be together at this moment. So as you're joining us, let us know where you're coming from. This is the little ritual we begin with, so people can feel a little connected. I think it's important as a connection process to say where we're coming from. My name is Janusz, and as you can see over here, it's all reversed, live from Brooklyn. Hey, Darren, good to see you. So as people are rolling in, let us know where you're coming from. Let me know if there's any difficulties with the audio or any, Darren's not from, I wouldn't consider England boring at all. I think it's delightful. So let me know if there's any challenges with the audio, video, anything, and we'll get started from there. Let's see. We're going to be doing a little bit of meditation today, having a little fun on the cushion. So, as folks are rolling in, hi, folks. Good to see you. Yeah, let us know where you're popping in from. Today, we're going to be continuing our theme around metta meditation, loving kindness, and how to apply that in particular to, or how to use some of the techniques in the mind illuminated system, along with metta practice, and using a practice that I found. I don't want to say I found it, as though I'm Magellan over here, that I first came in contact with in Burma from a teacher named Sayadaw U Indaka. And U Indaka is a direct disciple of Mahasi Sayadaw, if anyone's heard of Mahasi. And that means simply that he has a little bit of contact in that way. The premise is that this meditation is closer to what Mahasi taught than other practices. But, there's always a little bit of a skepticism from my position, because I asked Shinzen about this once. Why do teachers so intensely focus on that it came from this tradition? This is where it came from. And why is there always this distortion and this attempt to pack it into this historical narrative, even when it clearly is not? An example of that is Uba Khin's body scan. And there's this story they really hold to, that this came from a monk in a cave, that was directly taught by the Buddha, I think. And it's there's no historical evidence to that fact. So it's just anyway, that's just an interesting little tidbit. And I asked him why that is, and his general answer was that if you live in an orthodox sort of theology where everything has to come from an original source, and if it doesn't, then it's not really valid, then innovation is either stifled or has to be crammed into the shape of this other sort of history. So yeah, that's just the case. So wonderful. So as folks are rolling in, let us know where you're coming from. This is the Joy of Being AliveStream, and we're going to be practicing for about 25 minutes, and then we're going to, from there, do a little Q&A, do a little reporting, what happened, what you're like now. And I also thought today we would do a little fun experiment. I want to show some of my artwork. This isn't going to be a big tour of a lot of my artwork. I want to show one piece, and it's not even the piece that I think is the most illustrative of any particular point, but it was something that I pulled up and I felt, okay, this has a lot to do with teaching and a lot to do with the same concepts that I'm guiding people towards often in meditation. And I want to make sure that folks allow their own interpretations. They don't have to feel like my interpretation is the best one. Oh, good morning, Pam from Los Angeles. Welcome to the stream. Okay, so we're going to be practicing for, like I said, 25 minutes. And we're going to be practicing in stillness. But of course, this is a metta practice, so you want to practice in a way that's going to be comfortable for you, that's not going to be overly painful. Sometimes we feel like we have to bear down and bear with it. Because this is a heart practice, we want to be a little bit slower, a little bit kinder to ourselves, gentle, and not necessarily need to push so hard. Okay. Sardines for tea. Hi from UK. I'm wondering, sardines from tea, is that your given name or is that your is that your is that a handle? I'm assuming that is your birth name. Wonderful. So as we join ourselves here, just getting a sense of connection. We have folks coming from Los Angeles, England, UK, and we keep noticing folks from UK, and as everyone knows, the entire UK is just London. There's nothing outside of that. This is my very American perspective, or the sort of trope. I wonder if anyone else knows this joke. What's someone who speaks, you can't respond, so what's someone who speaks 3 languages? They're called trilingual. What's someone who speaks 2 languages? They're called bilingual. What's someone who speaks 1 language? They're called American. And it just, I noticed that there's a real America-centrism, American privilege that happens with our geography. So, okay. So when you're ready, finding a nice, comfortable position. Let me make sure everything's going okay here. Okay. Oh, good. Nothing is crashing and burning. Lovely. Okay. So when you're ready, just gently closing the eyes. Beginning by taking a few comfortable deep breaths and just feeling the body rise and fall. We'll begin by sweeping through the body to be sure we're not holding any undue tension. So starting at the top of the head, relax the brow, relax the eyes, allow the face to go smooth. Relax the tongue and let the jaw go slack. Relax the neck and the shoulders. The upper arms, elbows, forearms, wrists, and relaxing the hands. Taking a moment to tune into the subtle sensations in the tips of the hands, palms, letting go of any attempt to control, breathing, just letting the body breathe as it will. Noticing the natural tightening and relaxing of the upper chest and upper back as the breath comes and goes. Relaxing the belly and the lower back. Relaxing the hips and the upper legs. The knees and calves. The Achilles, the ankles, and relaxing the feet. And then tuning into relaxation throughout the entire body. And letting go of any need to do anything. To tune in, to meditate, to be aware. Letting go of all of these. And from this place of non-doing, not needing this moment to be any different, we're going to add the slightest little bit of doing. Just 3% of efforting towards creating a wish. Directing it towards no particular person. May you be peaceful. May you be peaceful. May you be peaceful. Repeating the phrase over and over. And knowing that the object of meditation is not the efforting to create the wish. In other words, it's not the wishing itself. It's the wish which occurs through that efforting. And we're looking to connect with the most subtle aspects of this wish, so we don't want to over-effort. May you be peaceful. May you be peaceful. In a way, we're letting the system say the phrase, make the wish, and we're simply observing the experience of the wish. We could get caught in efforting to try to make the wish more vibrant or intense. But we're positioning ourselves between the peace that we're wishing, this zero or equanimity, and the rest of our experience, which is more active than this deep abiding peace. In order to make the wish genuine, real, actually wishing peace, to some degree we need to have contact with it, at least a little. As though we're drawing from a well, and directing it forwards, not focused on the drawing, not focused on the forwards, just the result of these small areas of volition. And now we're going to make a slight change. Without needing to go into a lot of imagining detail. Having the barest sense that there's a being, a person, an animal that is deeply worthy of this wish, where there's as little conflict as possible in our relationship to them. And that tiny bit of doing, that creation of the wish, we're going to shift it over to this experience of this other person, as though their being was drawing the wish out of us. Again, it doesn't have to be terribly specific. We don't need to imagine their face or likeness. Just the barest sense, and the key being that they have a kind of gravitational force pulling this genuine wish for peace to them. May you be peaceful. May you be peaceful. May you be peaceful. As sure as we would be that a ball dropped would fall towards the earth, with the same level of simplicity and inevitability, letting the wish be drawn from us to this being. And at times this experience can feel joyful, exciting, a sense of connected compassion. And all of these are fine, not a problem if they happen to be occurring. But just remembering that we're wishing peace. The wish of peace is being drawn from us. And letting any other sensations of joy or fascination, interest, or any other distraction simply be a bit of turbulence, a bit of agitation that might be masking this experience of peace. Being cautious of any dullness, any spaciness, and tuning into the vivid qualities of the peace as it's drawn from us to this being. If at some point the phrase becomes more of this same turbulence, feeling free to let that go. Just choosing based on which gives us the clearest, most vibrant access to this wish. wherever you are with your practice, just staying with this, letting this momentum carry you, and allowing a tiny bit of light to enter the eyes. Eventually allowing the eyes to rest on one point as they fully open. Connecting with the wish. Connecting with the experience of it being drawn out of us. And noticing how much this transition is like our daily lives. This is simply to show that we can bring this practice into each moment of our day. Here we are, sitting with our eyes open. The only difference now is a slight willingness to connect with a simple wish. Okay. What happened? What was it like? And what do you like now? I use that phrasing, if anyone doesn't recognize it, actually comes from in conversations around recovery. Often people will say, what was it like, what happened, and what do you like now? To basically describe your entire story, the narrative arc of moving from being someone in some sort of very destructive habit form, what actions you took, and then what effect does that have on your experience? And that's actually kind of a beautiful way to report any particular meditation. So, what were you like as you began the meditation? What happened? And what do you like now? Does anyone know the famous story of, who was it? Upandita at Spirit Rock. Does anyone know this story about him in reporting? Sorry, cute. I'll mention it unless otherwise noted. So as people are beginning to type in their replies, reports, and I do appreciate people talking about their experience. It's really powerful, not only for me to help navigate some of this material, but also for everyone else on the line, because when somebody gives a report and says, it was like this for me, that helps everyone get a sense of what's going on in different people's consciousnesses, which is helpful, but also that there is some degree of universality to this material, and often something someone else is going through is something we might be going through next week or tomorrow, that kind of thing. We have Jason Paul with us here, a little bit late from NYC. Well, Jason, welcome. Good to see you. Glad you're here. So what were you like? What happened? And what are you like now? So this story of Goenka, I'll tell this story, but feel free to send any reports as we're talking. Oh, not Goenka, Upandita. So Upandita was teaching a retreat at Spirit Rock, a month-long retreat, and he's notoriously intensive. I maybe mentioned Goenka because there's a similarity there where it's very hard-nosed, intensive, and that intensity, it's somewhat personality, but it's somewhat by design. The Burmese people under threat of, colonialization and having their culture wiped out, had a strategy, and the strategy was, what if we teach awakening practices to non-monks, which was a little bit novel. And what if we come up with systems that would be the most efficient way to try to teach this material? Zen has a kind of opposite approach to some degree. It's less efficient. It's not about efficiency. It's about it really completely affecting the system. So there's sort of these different drawbacks and different activities related to pedagogies. Anyway, I digress. So U Pandita is teaching at Spirit Rock, and at some point at like the week and a half mark, maybe the 2-week mark, he is giving his talk, and at the end of the night, and he says, I don't know his accent. I can do a terrible Burmese accent, but he's like, I have found that some of you have been untruthful in your reports to me in interviews. I will be in my room at 1 p.m. tomorrow, available for you to apologize. Which I thought was awesome. And a little context is that when you go to U Pandita, he's pretty demanding, and he's actually also weirdly, I've heard he's very flippant also. Someone will come in for this really serious report, and especially if someone's like very in need of attention, he'll just like look at the newspaper and be like, that kind of thing, in a sense to draw out of them the sort of ego sense of needing something to be met, and structure that way. But for many people, and a lot of his guidance and his instructions in reporting is, okay, exactly what happened, what sense was active. Okay, well, I was noticing the breath and there's tingling sensations in the chest. What happened then? I noticed a sound. Okay, great. Then what happened? And he's really serious. He wants to know piece by piece, inch by inch, what happened in the report. And that's a way of helping people move towards clarity. When I work with one-on-one students, at the beginning, often I'll have some people continue doing it, but at the beginning I'll have people write reports or type in reports, which helps bring clarity to the system. So that's what he was expecting people to do, is like, I want you to report like that. And so people were people got a little nervous. The next day at 1 p.m. or 10 of 1, outside of his hut was a line of everyone in the retreat, or at least 80% of the people in the retreat, which is 80 people, all of whom were waiting to apologize to him for being dishonest. And so it was an interesting pedagogical trick to say, you need to say exactly what's happening. And it was also a way to motivate people to really, really pay attention. So that's what I'll do. Exactly what happened. I want a second by second report of exactly what occurred. Let's see, Darren Brown says, it seems like a blend of mindfulness with a sprinkling of metta. It's very subtle. Yeah, I think part of it is that for me, I wanted to shape this practice. And just in full transparency, I'm not trying to teach it in the most precise translation of what was taught in Burma. Somebody asked about this recently. Because often in Burma, they'll just give these sort of very standard instructions that you've heard 100 times, and then it'll be in the talks, it'll be in the questions, it'll be in the personal interactions that they'll say, oh no, you're too much this way, or you'll hear in the interviews with other people that people keep asking this question, and they answer it in this way. And so I emphasize the non-doing side, because what I found is often in interacting with Westerners, there's such a sense that metta is so much about doing, and the more you do it, the more you're doing a metta practice, the more you're really trying to get that thing across. But we're actually trying to move towards, in this case, a mind state. We're not really trying to move towards a body state of good emotions. We're trying to move towards a mind state of the mind being shaped in the shape of metta. And so it is very subtle, and it's like any meditation object. At the beginning, it's very, very subtle, and then over time, it becomes very clear. I can have contact with it now as I'm talking to you. So, yes, lovely. Sardines for Tea says, I found it very calming and warming. Lovely. I was slightly tense before, more than I had realized. It turns out, but that's much diminished now. Well, that's lovely to hear, Sardines. Thank you so much for that report. And that reminds me, the next thing we're gonna do is look at some artwork of mine. The embarrassment body mind is already coming up because I don't really show my artwork to anybody. I haven't done this in a long time. I haven't made artwork in a while, so this is older material. And so yeah. I also wanted to mention, I forgot to mention this, if you would like to support the stream, we love your support simply by being here. You can tell people that it exists, which is helpful because that's how this expands, as people say they bring their friends. And that's typically what we want, is people to genuinely not spam people, but say, hey, this thing is, I like this, come hang out. Another way, if you want to support, if you're here on YouTube, is to do a what's called a super chat. In the chat, there's a sign to give a donation. The first person who gets donations gets high fives from me. Every other person from there gets we haven't decided what that would be. Maybe elbow high fives. And then each person after that, or the final person, whoever the final person is, gets to be our co-host for the day. And yesterday's final kind contributor was Deb. So Deb, thank you so much for holding the equanimity chair. We very much appreciate that. Sardine says, is U Pandita the one who Joseph Goldstein tells the story of him telling him in an interview, why don't you be a man? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's possible, but I couldn't tell you if that's the case. It sounds pretty rough if that is the case. There's stories of U Pandita being kind of confrontational, but I don't know. I would be very curious. It might be worth looking up. Okay, so let's jump here into this one piece of art. Again, it's not purely indicative of all of my artwork, or it's not the crowning jewel here. Okay, I'm just opening this up. Here we are. Okay, this is the artwork. Let's put it on screen. Oh. Okay. So here we are. This is the piece. It has a title that actually I wouldn't title it that now, so I'm gonna skip that. But I would be very curious from your perspective, what's going on here? There's a few things that's worth mentioning. So for me, this is very much connected to meditation practice and a lot of the principles that I try to teach in meditation practice. All of the objects here are found except for this. I don't know if I can point towards things. Oh no, it's the layer underneath. So the wooden piece that's right over here, that way, that little wooden thing, that is not found. That's the only thing that's made. Everything else is found as is. So I'd be curious what folks think for themselves, what is going on here for them in this work. I'll read some previous chats while we do that. But yeah, let me know what your interpretations are. I can barely draw a stick figure. Wow. It shows that you have a creative mind. Well, yeah, and I'd be curious what you think is going on. It's in the history of conceptual and minimal art, there is this sense of people, putting things together in a way that is very specific and very intentional. So there is a fair amount of intentionality here. It's not, I was saying this to Rakhel, it's not meant to be surrealist, just putting a bunch of random stuff together. No pressure to interpret if you don't want. So log in whatever your interpretation is, and then lock it in. Don't let it be swayed by the words that I say coming now. But I'd be curious to hear. So part of what I'm trying to guide people towards, a very important piece of insight, which is very helpful, is this way of relating to the world outside of particular concepts, relating to the world outside of concepts, connecting to the world in a way that is perceptual, not conceptual, which is interesting that I'm using a form called conceptual art, not that consistent linguistically, but that's the shape of things. Jason says, at first glance, it gives me the idea of a long path of meditation through the mind. Very interesting. And the twists and turns. It's worth noting that I started meditating when I was a teenager, when I was young. And from there, I basically turned artwork into my meditation. I didn't know it at the time, but now that I understand meditation a little bit more clearly, I think that that's exactly what I was doing. You're curious as to the end of the piece. That is a very, see, this is why I need you folks. I didn't even mention this little piece in the corner here. I can't point. There's no way to point on my screen here. In the upper corner, which way is that? This way. In that upper corner, it's the end of the pipe. It's a cut-in, and that's a sponge that I found that was folded in that way, that dried in that shape. So it is a sponge. Maybe I'll tell you what the title was at the time. I might have changed it. Well, I sort of don't. I feel like the title's too on the nose. Okay, so part of the thing that I'm trying to do with folks is develop a consciousness that is outside of concepts. So really a perceptual consciousness. This piece for me is about the production of meaning, the way that the mind produces, puts things together, activates things in a way that is not necessarily inherent to those things. And in my experience, and a lot of the sort of the way that I was thinking at the time, there was this sense that we think things are inherently a thing. We think things are inherently an object. So for instance, here's a little tin of, what are they called? Thumbtacks, a little tin of thumbtacks. And there's a sense that it is this thing. It is a tin of thumbtacks. That's its fundamental nature, or this is a plant. Now there's a way in which it totally is a plant, but the plant doesn't know that. The plant doesn't know that it's separate from light and soil in that way. So in a way, it's about having an experience of the world that is pre-conceptual, that is pre-linguistic, is another way of saying that. Now, not that this piece does that exactly, but the goal was to illustrate. The title of the piece was called Suction House. And I still have this question about whether that was, the right title. But the point is that I wanted to do something that created this structure, that created this sort of interaction that was clearly produced in this scenario. Because often the production of meaning, the production of language, the production of concept is just a given. Well, I have a self. That's how it is. You and me are on opposite sides of some political spectrum, so therefore we have to act in this way, or any of these larger superstructures that are built on all these smaller structures. So I wanted to create something that just created basically an interaction and show that the interaction was being created effectively in the mind. That's, for me, is what conceptual art is that the connection is clearly created in the person rather than there's a connection there and it exists out there in the world, that the connection is actually, that's the clearest way to say that I wanted to show something that showed that the connection between things is being made in the mind. With this pipe I found on the street and this sponge I found somewhere, and then this thing that I made. So yeah, that was that piece. Again, it's not the shining jewel of my portfolio, but I have one piece that popped up and I was like, this would be fun to talk about. So it's a metaphor. Great stuff. I'm just going to go on a little bit further here. The goal is actually, and I'd be curious, maybe I'm wrong about this. I'd be happy to be curious. I really didn't want to make a metaphor. One of the things that I found is really successful artwork is something where it is a metaphor, but it's also an illustration, or it is an example of. That's a better way of putting it. So yes, it can be a metaphor for the mind. It can be a metaphor for other things, but it is a literal example of putting things in a place, and the mind creates meaning. And a metaphor is like in a way, this could be a metaphor for a metaphor, right? Or it could be a metaphor for language, or it could be a metaphor for the mind. But ultimately, I wanted to create something that was an example of the interaction that I was describing. In a sense, the goal was to make it clear that the piece doesn't exist without the mind of the viewer. It requires the viewer to create the connection. And without that, because one side is a sponge and the other side is this hole, and there's a triangle, and so it's one side's pulling one way, and it has this sort of sense of some connection between the two. So yeah, that's just a little breakdown. So hopefully that was fun. Let me know what folks thought about that. It was a sort of weird piece to talk about because it's a pretty, in a way, it's very dry. It doesn't give you a lot. It's not like a really fun, beautiful, elegant piece. And I have ones that are a little more in that direction. So, but yeah, I'd be curious what folks thought. And wanted to say thank everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to be finishing out the week tomorrow with a bit more metta practice, loving kindness practice. And the way we're going to be doing this is we're going to, and I'd be curious if people want to message me or if you want to say in the chat now, whether we're going to switch to back to some insight practice and then metta again later, or if we want to continue the metta practice for a little while longer and then go back to insight practice. So we're going to do both either way, but what's the verdict here? Yeah, the mind wants to make sense of things. And I think part of it is I wanted to create an illustration of the way the mind wants to create a interaction. The mind wants to piece things together. So yeah, lovely folks. Well, today my wish for you is that you have a sense of metta in relationship to someone else, anyone else, other people on the stream, someone you interact with later on today, anyone you like. And looking forward to joining you here again tomorrow. Same time, same place. Looking forward to it, folks. All right. And remember that you can still chat after the end music comes on, and I'll be here for a little bit if other questions pop up. See you soon. Sardines, I'm sure you have your own personal experiences that are very valuable. That's really the key, though, is because it's always about personal experience. I think people get locked in with this idea that art has one particular meaning and it just means this one thing and that their interpretation isn't valid, but it really is. I think that that's an old way of viewing things, and we want to open up to everyone's perspective. Folks, have a great day. Great to see you. Look forward to seeing you soon.